Hello! It's yesterday at 12 o'clock. Welcome here. Today, I wanted to dip my toes into the redesign sphere by following the lead of all those who have come before me and doing a Doki Doki Literature Club redesign. Yay. Being my first time trying to redesign something, for the masses, TM, I wanted to start small, so I decided I'd just do the one character. My favorite Doki Doki character, Monika. Just Monika. I had a great plan, with some great ideas going into this, but almost immediately that plan changed, and changed, and changed again. Things weren't working, deadlines were coming, and, blah, 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 and something, 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 now we're here. So, let's get to the speed paint. Let me explain what I had in mind and where we ended up. The trials and tribulations of this simple Monika redesign idea. So, okay, if you haven't noticed, I'm a sucker for glitchy aesthetics. It's like my whole thing. It's what I built my channel around. So, DDLC being a glitchy, meta, interesting game with cute characters and big pretty anime hair and bows was immediately up my alley. And Monika, being a very clever fourth wall breaking character with a really iconic design, has been my favorite since the game came out. She's just such an icon. When you search up the name Monika, she's what comes up. Doesn't get much more iconic than that. So originally I was going to try to give her a classic, very to the point redesign, wherein I'd give her new clothes, new hair, maybe a new style. That all goes into my personal subjective design sensibilities. But here's the problem with redesigning your favorite character. I couldn't think of anything to change. I'm sure there are things that could be changed and improved to make her even more, up my alley, but apparently I am not the bitch to be able to figure it out, because I couldn't think of anything. Even after looking at other Monika redesigns, I was just kind of like, meh, the original was better. Or even like, okay, so for some context, I'm very critical when it comes to my own character redesign work. I'm very in-depth and sometimes very extreme with it. I want to keep the essence of the original character, but, personally, if you can look at this character and it looks like the same person in, just a different art style, or if it looks like the same character but they took a shower and now their hair is a little bit flatter and they're in slightly different clothes, I consider that a failed redesign for my own work. An unpopular opinion, to my knowledge, but one that I really only ever apply to myself. Because, everything I do has to be so close to perfect. Don't be like me, kids. Perfect is the opponent of finished. Or even of good, honestly. Still, redesigns of popular characters for me are meant to really stretch my creative muscles. An exercise in seeing how much I can make them my own. But whatever, so all this to say, I couldn't think of anything. And what small ideas I'd have weren't enough to constitute what I'd consider a full redesign. And it was upsetting, and I couldn't figure it out, so I moved on. One door closes, open a window, and jump to the next building like Spider-Man. That's the saying. So instead of a typical classic redesign, I had the idea of giving Monika a redesign by giving her a sort of final form. Because in the game, Monika doesn't really change design-wise, and once she's the only girl left in the game for the player to romance, she looks the same, except she's framed with this menacing glare. And it's great, but I'll say again, I'm a sucker for a glitchy aesthetic. I love corruption in character design in all sorts of ways. So I was like, what if I made Monika have a form where she's all glitchy, that she would take on at the end of the game, where, in theory, with each other girl erased from the game, Monika would get more glitched out herself for having gone in to where she shouldn't be able to go and, messed with the code and the files. I ended up making 3 ideas for what this could look like, and I'll take you through them individually. Firstly, this is probably my favorite final form of this lineup, but maybe in the future I'll be able to, make some more polished ideas. Subscribe if you want to see that, or whatever. plugging my stuff. Oh, and actually comment if you have any final form ideas of your own, and maybe I'll draw them. This first drawing is, of course, based around Monika's very iconic, exaggerated talking pose with her back arched to an extreme degree and her hands behind her back. I love this pose because it's just so insane, but it's also very dynamic. And more than anything, MatPat, when he played Doki Doki on GT Live for the first time, he tried to recreate it to much fanfare and much comedy, and it was great. Fond memories associated with this drawing. This was my first time actually trying to draw Monika with like a full, line art and all that. So my version is a little rough in this one. I tried to keep it simple in terms of shading with the central idea in mind of just making something that looks like it could be, easily a sticker or even a pin with just a little bit of extra yesterday flair, because I couldn't help a little bit of over-the-top highlighting and messy hair strands, just as a treat, just for me. But the final form version, I went off with different layer modes, playing around with opposite colors on top of opposite colors to create a scheme that looks just a little bit off and messy. Sort of, along with that, I had imperfect, mirror-y vibes of lining up these layers over top of each other and moving them just slightly out of place so they don't line up perfectly. It gave this really interesting final product that looks all trippy, and I really enjoy it. I think this conveys the idea that she's been warped by something, that she's broken, that she's a glitch. So, not my favorite of the drawings, but certainly my favorite of the final form concepts. I think it's the most realized version of this concept that I went with for kind of all three. My second version, on the other hand, is my personal favorite of the three actual drawings. The final form version of the first one is my favorite, but the drawing itself of Monika, before all the layer effects and craziness, the second one is by far my favorite. So let me show you that one. Her pose is based on her intro pose at the cover screen of the game, with the flippy skirt and the pen because, of course, literature club. I like her expression and her proportions, and I like how her bow is big and upturned and cartoony, especially in the style I chose to draw these in. It makes her look almost like a cat, and I'm 100% here for it. Also, can we take a moment to appreciate the outstretched hand that I drew? It looks so good. I love when hands turn out well. Sadly, the third drawing didn't have quite the same luck when it comes to hands, but at least we can appreciate this one. The idea for the final form of this one started with sort of Error Sans, for those of you who know him. His concept is that he's Sans but flipped in color, so he's stark black with a lot of vibrant reds instead of Sans' normal skeleton white with vibrant blues. A cool idea for an application of reversed colors, for sure. With Monika here, I tried to do something similar, but I couldn't really make it exciting. She's not as starkly colored as Sans is, so the reverse colors just ended up with all the blues of most reverse color applications. I messed with the color grading a lot until I got something that I was satisfied with as being interesting enough, especially if you, were to hypothetically see it in-game. I like the vertical blue screen of death text that I overlaid on this one. It's subtle, but it feels very effective. Even with all that, I feel like it could be more interesting. Maybe if I'd overlaid some red, maybe in the line art, this one would have the right amount of doneness to make it feel better in my eyes. But a simple opposite Monika is a fun concept, I think. Sometimes a simple design works. Maybe this one will be some of y'all's favorites. But I might still go in and mess with the line art. Who knows? Maybe I'll show that on screen if I do. Speaking of line art, let's get to the third drawing. Okay, so in my defense, I was really tired. I had just woken up, and I immediately jumped into drawing without a warm-up, and I did a bunch of very rough sketching for a poster, and then a bunch of rendering for a different poster, and by the time I got to Monika, I was running low on time, and I had warmed up, but all the art I'd done so far didn't require any precision, so choosing to do the full line art for this piece was probably not the wisest thing I could have done, but here we are, so there's no changing it now. I guess there could be, but I'm not gonna go and redraw this. The lower on the piece you go, I think the better it looks, with the highlight being the skirt. I like the pleats and the shiny parts of the stockings, but the farther up you go, the more it's just like, oof. The bow is too big, the eyes are too big, the fingers are a little too thick, the pose is pretty stiff, the shoulders are off, the hair tendrils aren't the same size, and the button on her jacket is too low. There's a lot that I can critique about this piece. I don't really know what I was doing. I was in a fucking haze, bro. But I had fun making it, at least. I think it was, I think it's important to post things even if they're not your best work, especially for somebody as perfectionist as I tend to be. Like, there's wanting your work to be good, and then there's unhealthy degrees of everything must be perfect. And I tend to lean towards the latter. So here's to ripping off the Band-Aid and just making something exist, not making it perfect. Maybe I'll make a full video about that topic, because I have a speed paint of a drawing that I'm not particularly proud of, but we'll see. Anyway, sadly, this third one was where things just couldn't go my way. I had two main ideas for this final form. Firstly, I wanted to lean into something about Monika trying to make herself perfect for the player. I had this idea of her not just erasing the other girls' files, but taking pieces of them and their assets to try to steal the appeal of the other three girls. This, I thought, could be represented by their identifying features being slapped onto her own in like this glitchy, almost muddy manner, but I struggled hard with this concept, this like Photoshop flowy vibe concept, especially because each of them wears the same school uniform. Their hair is the most distinctive part of all four, and I couldn't figure out how to combine all four of their hairstyles into something that makes sense or looked interesting and not just weird in my brain. The point was for it to look kind of weird, but I couldn't figure out a way to translate what I was going for, Maybe if I had drawn from their other outfits, but I feel like those aren't as recognizable. I don't know. In the end, I abandoned that idea, but you can still sort of see the remnants of it in Natsuki's hair accessory on Monika's fingers and Yuri's purple hair clips on Monika's bangs. That initial idea having failed, I pivoted to a different sort of layering idea. What if in her glitchy form, everything is out of whack and her art messes up, so there are things that aren't where they should be, like a corrupted file? Like, for example, her bow could be in front of her face instead of behind it, like the assets glitched out. Specifically, I had the idea of her bow coming out of one of her eyes. I thought that would be really cool, but my unique ideas for this kind of thing ended there. I couldn't figure out how to strike a balance between the layering and still keeping it interesting to look at. I wanted it to be creepy and off-putting, not just strange and unintentional looking, but I couldn't figure out a way to strike that balance, and even then I was running out of time to work on this drawing, especially with the aforementioned other posters I was working on at the same time. A bitch has homework piling up. So in the end, I abandoned that idea too, and lost for other concepts. I just kind of put her colors in the microwave and added a bunch of blue screen aesthetics. I actually don't mind the end product of the final form, even if the non-glitchy version isn't my favorite thing ever, but I feel like the other ideas I had could have been done well. I just, now just wasn't the time, I guess. The big eyes ended up being a little bit of a happy accident, though, because it let me have the eyes as a blue screen and let that be a focal point, which is something I wanted for this final form. You live and you learn. There will be better drawings, and the one immediately before this one was very good. The second one of Monika, it looks very cool, if I do say so myself, even if I did forget to draw her lapels, which are the thing on her jacket. But whatever. Overall, I think this was a valuable experience. It really increased my line confidence, which is something I've struggled with for a long time. I usually hate line art because I feel more comfortable with the rough, sketchy vibe, and line art isn't always the call. Sometimes just refining a sketch or cleaning one up works, but I want to be able to do line art, I think this helped a lot with my tendency to endlessly redo or to do a bunch of small lines instead of the necessary one big, long, confident line that I should be using more. This was also a fun style to explore. I've been more experimental recently, sometimes leaning a bit more into comic book aesthetics, sometimes into more cartoony vibes, other times I'm painting, other times I'm going hard into non-painted rendering. It's been a lot of fun, and this was certainly a necessary part of that exploration. Another thing these drawings helped me with a lot was art output. Like I said, I'm a student, so there's always a lot going on, but with this, I'm starting to actually figure out how to get the output I want, instead of just very rarely working on art for YouTube and letting months go by between videos. But who knows, I guess. Maybe something will come up. Hopefully not, though. I like the idea of actually being able to put out videos weekly, or I guess bi-weekly, whichever I need to do, especially depending on my school and my D&D schedules. I loved drawing Monika, especially the second one, as I've already said it like a million times so far. She definitely might become one of those characters that I just draw all the time when I'm bored. At least some doodles. Might be a while before I'm confident enough to try my hand at doing a big full-body illustration of her, considering, how that last piece looks. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. Which drawing was your favorite, and which final form do you like most? Do you want to see me try this again, or maybe give one of the ideas that I gave up on another shot? Or would you want to see me try a whole new thing? Or even would you want me to redesign a different of the Doki Doki girls? There's a lot of options. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one I get. I hope you had a good day yesterday. Remember to drink water, and I will see you next time. Bye.